Well, welcome to the City Council 4 o'clock informational meeting on November 14th. We have a few items on the agenda today. The first item of business is Urbanized Development Committee report from Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you very much. Happy to do this. We had our meeting last week on the 9th, Thursday, 4 p.m. at CCOG. The agenda was posted, I know, so if anybody wants to look, they can. We did hold an election for our chairman again, and Carol Tweet was unanimously reelected as chairman. So we're happy to have such a great person as Carol to lead us. The advisory committee, Citizens Advisory Committee member, we did appoint some new members to some committees. I've got that report up here. If anyone would like to look at it, who they are, et cetera, and what committees they were appointed to, happy to share that with you. Then we had an annual list of obligated projects, which is this report right here. And it tells us about monies that are going to be spent this year or are being bid for by the end of the year, and that will be taking place in the next 3 to 4 years, 2, 3, 4 years. Some real interesting ones here. Arrowhead Parkway, east of Highway 11 or Veterans Parkway, is scheduled for an $8 million update, and the bids are going out, are out, and they're going to get started on that very quickly, just for your information. One of the things, I can't remember what was on this one, perhaps Rick, or Councilor Kylie, you could help me with, is the big one for the 85th and I-220, no, and I-29. That one's being let. Well, that's a different one. It was no, it's the they let the one for north of on Highway 100 Veterans Parkway north of Madison all the way up to Interstate 90 and interchange there. They're going to be letting this fall, and that is the largest project that the State Department of Transportation has ever let. It'll be close to $60 million. So it's a big project. I think they said they have 3 bridges basically to put in over there and a number of other things. That'll be the biggest one until the bridge going across the Missouri at Platte is redone that's going to be $100 million. So it takes money to make things move, and so that's just thought I'd bring that up. Then we got access plan was completed, a self-evaluation of the access plan of the CCOG building where all this takes place. They did a self-evaluation as to how they match up with the ADA. They had 4 things that they needed to take care of. One was replacing a sign that was too low. They had to regrade a curb ramp and regrade a landing. And then one more, which is evaluate sidewalk connectivity so that people didn't have to go out into the parking lot to get in there. Just interesting that they would do that to bring themselves into compliance with the ADA. Next is the public participation for the exit 9 on 229, that's Benson Road. The area that they're working on right now is the public participation, so they're planning some public meetings that people can come in and learn a little bit about what's being planned up there, make any suggestions or comments that they would have. Then the ADA program, we did a preliminary engineering for, I'm sorry, let's go, I'm one off here. A revision on the preliminary engineering for an interchange at the Corson Brandon exit, which is not a big deal, it's just a couple $1,000. They also we did a corridor study, the T corridor, and that's going to be, let's see, yeah, the T corridor, they're doing that, and that's going to be somewhere in the next 10 years, something will get done on that. That's how far they've got to plan out to do these things with the kind of money. 85th Street overpass, we're going to have our second set of sound barriers, like on Interstate 229 on 85th Street at Bruce and is it Beale and Brett Street, just to the east of there with the It's going to be too close for the road is, new road is going to be built there. It's going to be too close to the apartment building, so they're going to have to put up a sound barrier. So that'll be the second one in Sioux Falls. Interesting also that the city of Sioux Falls did a complete sidewalk inventory this past summer. Hired a number of interns. They went out and literally walked all of them or drove them and got out where they thought there were problems, marked it down. And so we're going to be making a plan, putting a plan together to improve the sidewalks in the city of Sioux Falls. And if you want to take a look at how you stand on that, you can go to Sioux Falls website, siouxfalls.org/sidewalks, and you'll be able to tell if your sidewalk's compliant or what's going on with that, et cetera. And that's about it.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Any questions for the Councilor? A lot of big projects coming along.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
And I will add that I continue to ask them all the time about Veterans Parkway swinging south of 57th there and coming over to the T exit, because that's one of the projects they planned us and promised us that they would do, but is not being planned right now. So I keep digging them every time I get a chance.
Okay, very good. That brings us to item number 3, which is open discussion. Do we have any items of open discussion? Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, I attended the grand opening of the downtown bus depot. I want to say the renovations are very nice. There's a lot of nice touches. The skylight to let natural light in on the platform. There's colored concrete and grooves that really helps those who are handicapped as kind of a wayfinding. And there's a lot of other nice little touches to help those who have disabilities. There's also a new bike rack and a bike repair station that was donated by a local bike group. Has lots of tools, including air to fill up your tires. And as you may know, as you probably know when you read the email, they had free bus rides yesterday all day long in celebration of it. And it just so happened I had my car in the shop, so I decided I'll just make a day of it. I haven't ridden the bus in many, many, many years. And so I ended up on 6 or 7 different buses, 5 different routes, and went to and from downtown. It went to different meetings, just planned it out so I could just kind of bounce around the city. And all in all, it was a very good experience. I talked to a lot of the riders and learned about really how critical it is for those who are using it. Incredibly critical, whether it be because of that's their form of transportation for income reasons, or because of disability things in which driving is just impractical or impossible. So it's really a lifeline for them, and if they lost it, it would be quite a disaster for them. So came out with a lot of good thoughts and ideas. I'm still kind of digesting it, and I think the first-hand knowledge is going to be helpful as we go forward looking at the challenge of transit. But it was a very interesting experience, and I enjoyed it. Very
good. Thank you, Councilor. Any other items? Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. Yesterday we had a TIF forum. We partnered with the Chamber, and I know there's a couple of folks here from the Chamber that spent a lot of time as well. So thank you for that. We had a great turnout. We had about 50 people there, really to learn about what TIF is from the state's perspective and how we are impacted as citizens as well as elected officials and what that looks like. The invitee list really was open to the whole public as well as people within the administration, elected officials from municipalities, school districts, counties, legislators, the list goes on. And so Lieutenant Governor Matt Michaels was there, Secretary Gerlach, Deputy Secretary Wiest, and then the Director of Property Taxes and Special Taxes was there as well. So anytime we can continue to educate ourselves on a process as we move forward is really important. We know there's going to be some legislative changes made. Over the last couple of years, we've had Brent O'Neill and his staff, the staff there, give us an update on an annual basis as well as creating a TIF dashboard. That dashboard that was created some time ago is exactly what the state is looking for. And so we as a council previously, many years ago, had that process in place that Brent and his crew over there have created. It has been updated and sent out to the council as of yesterday. and also shared with the state. And that is exactly what they are looking at, to dissect and be able to come up with a full list across the state as far as looking at all of the TIFs, what is included, what are the classifications, how much money are we talking about. And so I thank you for your time. I know that they are here as well today. And so thank you for your time putting that together for us and the public to be able to just look at that as far as what we do. So just wanted to brief on that and thank everyone for who attended.
Okay, very
Can I
good.
ask a question?
Yes.
I reviewed that paper that they used over
Yeah.
there and things, but you said something interesting about the dashboard that we presented, gave to them. What it didn't do is give them all the work that Brent put in and Smith, when they put together a chart or a template on how and why we're going to give TIFs away in Sioux Falls. Were they interested in that at all, or just how many we had?
Right. Well, it's my understanding that those conversations take place. Sioux Falls is really viewed as being pretty conservative with TIF compared to some other municipalities. And so we've been used as an example. Really, if you heard Secretary Gerlach talk, he really congratulated and expressed great communication for the city as a whole by saying, you know, you guys aren't just handing these out all the time. There is a lot of work. There's a lot that don't get them that do want them. And so the due diligence is put in that. So those are communications that they continue to have with the state outside of this elected body. I'm sure they could answer any questions that you have in the future, but you know, they are communicated with to get that base value, to walk through some of the details as far as classification. That's been the hot topic, is how to classify a TIF, if it's industrial, local, or economic development, and we will see changes with that. You know, we learned a lot, and I think that it's always good to look at it and make the process better. If we can continue to be open and transparent and keep the process moving in the right direction, you know, everyone wins in the end. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Staley.
Well, and I will just piggybacking off of what Councilor Erickson said about the presentation yesterday. I did make a statement after we heard from our Matt Michaels and Andy Gerlach that I think in this era of our state and our city government, it's more imperative than ever that we show the citizens we're working on openness, transparency, and accountability. And this TIF thing is something that I just kind of got into as a council member in the last year and a half. And so I was appreciative of the conversation that we had. And one of the entities that we talked about yesterday was the school district. None of the school district officials were at the meeting, so I took it upon myself to call some of them today. I had a conversation with Jim Holbeck, the superintendent of Harrisburg, and also Todd Veek, who's our business manager here in the Sioux Falls School District. Neither of them were aware of that meeting, the presentation yesterday. And when we're talking about school districts, and also I want to bring in the county element, I think both of those entities need to be involved in this discussion, and right now state law doesn't mandate that they are. So I'm going to use the Lloyd property that we just passed the TIF on as an example. Todd Veek in the school district said he was not aware of that Lloyd property TIF, that no one had approached him about it. And Holbeck in Harrisburg said that the city council in Harrisburg they will come to him in the midst of developing a TIF and get his feedback about how it's going to affect him. But one thing I think going forward that we heard yesterday is that we need to make sure that we are vetting this out properly, and that we're making sure that we're not giving TIFs to a property or a development that would already be happening. In the case of the Lloyd property that we voted on a few weeks ago, we weren't allowed to see what the other proposals were. So that makes it difficult to say this is the best fit for this area when we're not allowed to see these things. And this is occurring. I'm going to continue to talk about it because I don't think it's right for our citizens. It's not right for our government. But both Holbeck and Veek said that that's appropriate to say, is this really something that's going to have a TIF in order for it to happen? The other thing that they talked about was opening this up to allow TIFs for blighted properties for landlords, for rental properties. Because I'm talking to citizens and they're saying, hey, we're giving a developer $4.3 million TIF for his development, which will, at the end of the day, is going to be worth a lot of money for this guy. Why can't we open that up, and I think it's a statewide discussion, and give this to property owners, somebody who buys a piece of property in Sioux Falls and fixes it up? That also helps our community. It's about what's the impact for all the citizens. And I was also grateful that one of the participants yesterday asked about the other states surrounding us, how they handle TIFs. And it sounded like Minnesota and Iowa have much more stringent regulations about a TIF. And they also have a stronger threshold to say what is actually going to be the economic benefit for the citizens before we award this TIF. So I think moving forward, I'm appreciative we've had these discussions. I look at a TIF with a lot of skepticism, and I think there are people in our community that do. We don't want to hand them out like candy, as the mayor said. He's not, I guess, a supporter of that as well. But I appreciate that we had the discussion, and just wanted the citizens to know what I heard yesterday.
And I would just remind everyone that the Sioux Falls School Board members and the super was invited and included, and if that didn't trickle down to their staff, then that's obviously out of our hands. And they were invited and had a seat at a table for the task force that took place over the summer with the governor's task force. Yvonne with Municipal League was our representation, as well as many others across the state. And so there has been great representation and fully vetted for that. So just want to make sure that that was clear. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ralphie?
Yes, Darren, Director, could you catch him? Could you, it seems to me you've told me that we always inform the school and the county on TIFs that are proposed and that are going through. Am I correct or not?
That's correct. We extend offer to both the county and the affected school district to come and do a presentation to their bodies. On this last project with Lloyd Companies at the Cascade, the Minnehaha County Commission took us up on that offer, and we went and presented to them. The school district did not ask for a presentation. Okay, so what Councilor Staley said, when somehow there's a mix-up there when she says they didn't get notice that this was going to happen. Maybe it went to other people instead of to the people she talked to? I can't speak to okay, you know, if there's a miscommunication internally, but we do offer to the affected school district and to the county that will come and...
That policy was still in force?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other items for open discussion? Councilor Selber.
Just wanted to throw out one of my favorite things to do in this line of service is anytime we have the opportunity to honor those that have served our country for their line of service. Those are some of my favorite programs, and we had the opportunity to do that this last weekend at Washington High School. The Chamber, the Military Affairs Committee sponsored the Veterans Day program again Saturday, and it was well attended. It was a beautiful service, nice music, and yeah, it's just always one of my favorites, so just wanted to throw out another shout out and thank our veterans. It was a nice day.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other items? Councilor Rolfe?
Sorry, I'm taking up a lot, but I thought I should tell you that Prairie Green Golf Course is in pretty good shape for this time of the year. In fact, it's in real good shape. I played it yesterday, and it didn't play real well, but if you get a chance and the wind stops like it is today, it would have been better today. Go on out and play golf.
Courses are still open. Any other items? I have one, and last night I was pleased to attend Compassionate Sioux Falls Awards. Colleen Moran oversees that program, and I'm happy to say that one of our very own Assistant City Clerk, Denise Tucker, received an award last evening, and I would like to read to you what Colleen read last evening, because I think Denise is very deserving of the recognition. Denise Tucker truly believes in service to the community. She is a humble volunteer who volunteers not for recognition, but because she believes it is the right thing to do. Denise helps serve meals at the banquet. She has been instrumental in planning events for the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration and other events involving diversity of thought, race, and social issues. In addition, Denise has served as a board member for Sioux Falls Area CASA and as a member of the Volunteers of America and the United Way marketing boards. Denise has also been a mentor in the community, working through LSS and You Succeed. She has been involved in the Big Brothers, Big Sisters program and has volunteered for other numerous community organizations and events. So Denise, as Colleen stated last night, thank you for all you do for our community. Compassionate Sioux Falls and the City of Sioux Falls appreciates your generous and compassionate acts, and we as a City Council certainly appreciate everything you do in the community. And additionally, City Clerk Tom Greco wanted to point out, made a special point to point out, anytime that Denise requires time to participate in any of these activities during her normal day, she takes her personal time and then makes up her office time. She's doing this all on her own. So Denise, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you very much, everybody. And once again, thank you, Denise, as she heads off back to work again. It's always fun to do that. And I'd like to add, too, that we have other members of the City Council that work equally hard as Denise did. And we appreciate all of you and all the work you do. Okay, the next, our first presentation is by City Clerk Tom Greco on the 2018 election overview.
All right, good afternoon, City Council. My name's Tom Greco, as you know, City Clerk and your election official. So I've got one slide before you right now, which really has the key information for the elections next year. And this identifies when our regular municipal election is, when the runoff municipal election is, if we need one, but also, more importantly, voter registration deadlines and absentee voting. So these are really some of the key dates associated with the election. I'm going to talk to you over the next couple of minutes about how we're going to get there, more from the perspective of me as your employee, letting you know what our office is doing to make sure that we're able to make this happen and the steps that we're taking. I expect to be back in front of you as time progresses, just giving you periodic updates on what's going on with planning. So this is what I'm going to cover today, talk about just some general information, and some of the information is going to be beneficial for candidates and just the public, people who may be interested in running or doing other things with regard to the ballot. I want to talk to you about some of our existing agreements. We don't do this alone. We do a large part of it, but we have some important partners out there that help us do this, help to make it a success each year. Talk to you about some of the key election tasks, the tasks for my office that we have got to accomplish, again, to be successful, but also some of the things that you'll have to do as a city council to make the election, again, successful. Then I'll talk about some resources that are out there for you, but also the public and certainly candidates. Okay, so just some general information. I think most people are aware of this. We know that there are currently 5 offices that will be vacated due to the expiration of terms. A few folks are term limited, but those are the potential races that we can see on the ballot come next April. But also, as you know, and it was discussed last month and the process is going on right now, there's the possibility for charter amendments. Generally, we have those on our election ballots. Also, other ballot questions, things like referenda or initiatives. And finally, a possible school board race, or 2 positions, I believe, for the school board. That's a decision that the council is going to have to make. The Sioux Falls School District is going to be entertaining that option, I think, at the end of this month. And then if they elect to want to do it, then I'll bring it back to you to formally have your approval, because we need both governing bodies' approval. But those are the things that we may see on the ballot. Okay, so this is more for your general information, of course, but also candidates that are out there and just anybody who's interested about the electoral process and what they need to do to run, to be a candidate, to get on the ballot. There are really 2 essential components for any candidate to take into consideration. And again, this is for somebody to get their name on the ballot or to be a candidate to be voted upon. There are two components. The first is that campaign finance component. As you know, Chapter 38 of our Code of Ordinances, the elections chapter, talks about campaign finance requirements specific to the city of Sioux Falls. What that amounts to is basically we've adopted Chapter 1227 of state law, which are campaign finance requirements, as they apply to legislative office. And that's what our candidates follow, generally the contribution limits, but all the other rules that go into campaign finance. But there are other committees that are out there. There are potential ballot question committees. There are political action committees, certainly the candidate campaign committees. Everybody has some sort of reporting requirement. And we make that very clear, or we try to make it very clear to those folks. And I'll show you in a bit where to find that information. So that's that campaign finance aspect that people need to follow. The other part is the nominating petition process, literally getting your name placed on the ballot. And there's really one key step that needs to be taken for that, and that's to have filed a valid nominating petition. So for mayoral candidates and at-large candidates in the city, they require 200 signatures of voters of the city. For district council members, they require 50 signatures, and this is all by charter, 50 signatures by persons that are residing within their district. Again, the nominating process is critically important, and I can't underscore it enough that that is what gets somebody's name on the ballot. The earliest date that anybody can circulate their nominating petition for a municipal election is January 26th. So we know there are a lot of folks out there who are interested in running for something, and that's wonderful, and they're aware that, you know, they have this gate to overcome as well, beginning at the end of January. They don't have to start on January 26th, but that's the earliest that it could be done. And the deadline to file those nominating petitions is going to be February 23rd at 5 p.m. At that point, unless they withdraw in writing their candidacy, then we'll know the candidates that will be on the ballot come April 10th. Moving along, I want to talk about some of our existing agreements out there and also some of the other agencies that play a part in our planning. And again, this is for your information, but I think it's important to understand sort of the landscape out there, what we're working with and who we're working with. The first one is with Minnehaha County. The agreement is with Minnehaha County, but specifically we work with the auditor's office. And there's a wide range of tasks that we share, but the two things I want to highlight that they do for us, and they're a wonderful election partner, is first, they do the vote tabulation on election night. They have the DS850s down there, the machines that actually tabulate. We own one of the three. They do that tabulation, but they also provide for absentee voting, which is critical. It's required by law. It makes our life a lot easier in my office, but I think it's also great for citizens out there that they're able to go and vote in one place during the absentee period, and I'm going to talk about that a little more in a moment here. The other agreement that we have, if we ever elect to combine elections, which we generally have done for the last several elections, is with the Sioux Falls School District. And I mentioned before that they're going to be considering at the end of this month whether they want to combine their election with us next April. And then if they choose to do that, I'll bring it back to you as a governing body for your approval as well. So that relationship is governed by agreement as well. And both of these agreements, for your knowledge, cover cost sharing, and really spell out who does what when it comes time for the election, so that there aren't any key pieces missed, and that we meet all those gates that we need to get to a ballot and get to the election. The other agencies and departments that provide assistance to us, and this isn't all-inclusive, but just kind of the general ones. First is the Lincoln County Auditor, a great resource for us. And again, I'm going to explain kind of the relationship that we have with the two county auditors. So they're both a tremendous resource for us, and certainly the voters that live in Sioux Falls, whether they're in Lincoln or Minnehaha County. But one thing I think most people understand, but sometimes get confused about, is when it comes to things like absentee voting. So when we absentee vote, either 15 days or 7 days before a runoff, 15 days before the regular or 7 days before the runoff election, if you want to vote absentee in person, you will go to the Minnehaha County Auditor's office, whether you're a Lincoln County Sioux Falls resident or a Minnehaha County Sioux Falls resident. And that kind of confuses people sometimes, because generally you should be requesting your absentee ballot through your county auditor, which people generally do, but all the absentee voting is done at Minnehaha County. Also, since they provide for our absentee voting, Minnehaha County mails out all the mail-in absentee ballots. So just kind of for your knowledge, and I know last time in the previous elections it's raised some confusion, and we'll do our best as the election draws near, and certainly absentee voting to give people an idea where they need to go and what they need to do to exercise that particular provision. Secretary of State's office, again, a great resource for us and certainly for candidates. We work closely with them. They provide obviously a lot of information, and you'll see when you look at our website, we link to their website quite a bit, and they do have a tremendous amount of useful information. And of course, city departments. This is certainly a team effort, and there are many city departments throughout the city that we rely on, specifically City Attorney's Office, Central Services, so the information technology folks, and also GIS. Public Works, our streets folks deliver all of our supplies and equipment, and the list goes on. Finance, they process the pay for all of our election workers. So it's truly a team effort to pull off the elections. So the key tasks that we're going to be working on in my office, and I consider these key tasks because if we don't do them successfully, then we'll quite frankly have problems on election day. So I want to kind of tell you what they are up front so that you're aware of what we're doing and where my focus in the office is going to be. The first one is campaign finance reporting. Obviously, the individuals, the committees will do the reporting itself, but we track it and we give them gentle reminders that they have items that are due. Polling locations, we're in the process right now of securing all of our polling locations. We have about 67 precincts that will be spread across about 55 or 56 different polling locations. So it's a big effort, and we're pretty far along right now in terms of securing those. Election workers, it takes a large number of people to run an election, and I call them all volunteers, but they are given a small stipend for doing it. It takes about 245 people. We're in the process, as a matter of fact, Tamara's the one doing it for all of our election boards for the precincts. We're a little over halfway through of getting all of our election workers, well ahead of where we were last time. We also do election worker training required by law. Delivery of supplies and equipment, obviously, if you don't have ballots, you don't have voting booths, then you're not going to have a successful election. Denise is working on that, and that's really a big coordination effort. Publication of election notices, making sure that stuff gets out in the newspapers as legal notices so that people are apprised and aware of what's going on. And that's really a complement or a supplement to what we have online and what we'll be doing in here to apprise folks of what's going on. Other key item is ballot preparation and ordering. That is a big piece of what we do, trying to make sure we get the right number of ballots to each one of the precincts. We work with ES&S, Election Systems and Software, a company out of Omaha, but also some offices in Minneapolis to help develop our ballots and to order them. And then absentee voting, I mentioned that before. We work, the Minnehaha County provides for it, but we staff it generally. So we'll have folks down there 2 weeks prior to the regular election. And then obviously the unofficial and the official election returns, making sure that you and the public get those unofficial results as quickly as possible. Then you'll have the responsibility, as I'll show here on the next slide, to canvass those votes at a subsequent meeting. So some other key tasks that you'll have as a governing body is setting the date of the election and combining, if both bodies decide to do so, with the school board. Also, you'll be appointing the election boards. We'll get the workers, but we'll put their names in front of you for you to officially endorse them and appoint them to be election workers. I mentioned the official canvass of votes, and then the installation ceremony and the start of terms on May 15th, getting that moving. So there's quite a bit of moving pieces throughout the course of the next several months. And again, our job is to facilitate that and make sure that we're hitting all those key hurdles and getting where we need to be. And so with that, I'm just going to leave you just with a quick view. We did update our website, and we hope it's comes across as very useful to folks out there. Let's fix this.
It's 175.
How many days is it till then? 175.
Okay, so I'll send this link to you all, and you can find it in the presentation for today. What I did hang on, Sire, was an election booklet, and I want to show you that first because I think it has a lot of great information in it for candidates, but also just anybody who wants to know what's going on with the election. So under, let me just go back here real quick. We've broken our election page down into 6 major sections to make finding information easy for folks out there, be them candidates or political committees, but also you all, so that you have access either to get answers yourself or to share it with your constituents as time progresses here. But I'm not obviously going to go through all this, but one thing I do want to highlight is that we did put what I think a pretty comprehensive election handbook together. It's only 75 pages, but it does cover really the key information for all the candidates out there. But I think it would also be a great resource for all of you because it really lists in pretty decent detail the things that my office will be covering down on and the things that we'll make sure happen. Everything from our publications to campaign finance reporting to issuing election certificates. And again, it's all online, easy to find, and we hope people make use of this. The other thing, and this is something that I'll come back probably next month or January, start talking about what our voters need to be looking at to figure out where they're going to go on Election Day to cast their ballot and ways to make it easier for them to find out key information. So with that, I'm going to close and open it up to any questions that you have.
Any questions for City Clerk? Yes, Councilor Neitzer.
Did you say that we own one of the voter tabulation machines?
We do. There are 3 of them, and we purchased one several years ago.
Are we allowed, do we just get to use that one, or can we use all
No,
three?
we use all 3 of them.
We can, okay.
And the county likewise uses the 3rd one, ours.
Historically, a mayoral election is probably going to have triple or more turnout from what we had just a few years ago in mine. Are there any dry runs planned, or we're to kind of do a little testing, stress testing, as it were? Because this will be a bigger
ballot
one.
counting, or we have just internally with it for our own schedule. We have some rehearsals set up so that we're aware of all the moving pieces. But by law, you're required to do a test of the counting machine. So we'll do that a couple days prior to the election.
And finally, this is something that's come up in other elections, and I think there is still some interpretation. I think they thought maybe you could. There's been discussion, I know, about counting the absentee ballots prior to the close to speed things up, so you're not doing after 7 o'clock, but not pushing the total button. Do you know where that's at?
We haven't solidified that with the auditor list, but one thing that we learned from the last election, we got started too late in terms of processing the absentee ballots. We're starting about 5 hours earlier than we did last time. So our goal at a minimum is to make sure that we're ready to roll right at 7 p.m. when the other ballots start coming in, because we don't have the same volume that, say, the Minnehaha County race would have, or even Lincoln County, where, we just got to talk through that, and I'll work with Auditor Litz to make sure that that we have a sound plan. But one of the key things, like I said, is getting started earlier.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilor Staley.
Tom, thank you for that presentation, and having run many times for office and done several petitioning ballots initiatives, I can tell you how important it is that we have staff that help direct people through these forums, because it can be kind of intimidating for people. And plus, if you don't get it done timely, you face a fine, right?
That's right.
Like, tell us how much the fine is.
It's for campaign finance submissions, it's $50 per day that you're late.
So I think everybody wants to do it the right way. Okay, a few questions about your presentation. You said that you're going to be alerting voters as to where they go to vote. What changes are we seeing? I know we just had a redistricting.
It's primarily the folks that were redistricted. And there were a couple, and we don't have it finalized yet, but there are a few different polling places based on previous polling places falling off, and we'll inform them as well through postcards.
Postcards?
Yep.
Okay. Do you ever put anything in the water bill? Like
we did last time, but we took a survey last time, and there were very few people who used the water bill insert to figure out where they voted. But it's something that we can.
Well, I guess I would disagree with that, because I think it was a very useful piece of information, especially when you're dealing with 56 precincts or how many. So I would encourage you to continue to do that. I don't know what, I wasn't aware that we were doing a survey on that.
Well, we do an informal survey at the election itself, and just ask folks where they figured out, where did you learn about where you would vote? And most of the majority of the respondents said that they learned online. And there are a few tools that are out there where people can look, and we're really going to, really push this to make sure that folks take advantage of the things that are out there. And one of them is from the Secretary of State's webpage, where the key thing is, number one, making sure that you're registered in the right place. It's one thing to live somewhere within a precinct and think you're going to a certain polling place. It's another thing to actually be registered within that precinct. So what we are going to push as we get closer is making sure that people take advantage of the voter information portal. But your point about getting that paper information out there as well, too.
Well, I personally had it, and I know a lot of our older people don't do the internet, so that having, I think they would get, especially if it's a freestanding piece of information, a paper in the water bill, they're going to see it. So I thought that was very valuable. I saved mine, actually. Okay, then the next, and I think you want to hit people in many different ways as far as reminding them that an election is coming.
Okay.
So I say stay with that. Okay, then you talked about getting together with the school district about setting the date of the election. There's a question mark. It's not necessarily, I thought it was April 10th.
No, because there are a couple steps. Number one, the school board needs to decide and pass a motion or a resolution saying that they'll combine with us for the second Tuesday in April. And then we need to take the step of saying, yes, we'll combine with the school district for the second Tuesday in April.
Okay, so that April 10th thing.
No, the date doesn't change. That's
Okay.
just the
And
term.
then tell us, and I know you've referenced this before, tell us the cost of the election that you budgeted for, and then the cost for the runoff.
So the cost for the election that we budgeted, I got to pull this out. About $95,000 for the regular election and $79,000 for the runoff. So the total cost is $174,000.
And is that the $79,000 for the runoff? Is that because of the volume you're expecting because it's the mayoral race?
No, the figures are based on a couple things. So the key question is, why is it less than the regular election? It's less because we, for the regular election, we'll pay people to go to election school. We don't have that cost the second time around. There are different publication requirements the second time around, which saves quite a bit of money. So there is a variation. So, but I guess to get more to the heart of your question, the way that I developed the budget for the election was based, it was kind of I don't want to say, worst case is not the right word to use, but the worst case in terms of voter turnout, and that would really be a great thing that we have a lot of people. So we're planning, hopefully, on obviously having enough ballots.
But if comparatively speaking, we've got the mayor's race happening now, and let's just back this up to 2016, when we, four of us ran. Had we done a runoff in 2016 for like my position at large, you would have had the same staffing mandate that you're going to have for this mayor's election.
Yep.
So it could have been $79,000 for that as well.
It could have been, and I don't have the figure with me off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the City Clerk? Councilor Selber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I think you put it well. There's quite a few moving parts to this process. You guys do a nice job. I just had a couple quick questions. You know, you've got earliest dates for certain things, like the earliest date to circulate petitions. I know I had read before, I can't remember what the date is, but you can't put out campaign signs before, I think, February 9th or 10th or somewhere in there. What other limitations are there at this point for candidates? Obviously, we've got quite a few that are in the field already, and I mean, what else can they do and not do at this point, just in...
I'd be apprehensive to give a comprehensive answer on that, because there's quite a few, I wouldn't say limitations, but it's more so things that they need to make sure that they're doing. Most of the candidates that are out there, certainly candidates that you can find on our website who filed a statement of organization, I've sat down and talked with nearly all of them. Again, it's their responsibility to make sure that they're hitting those gates. But generally, they're aware of those campaign finance reporting requirements. And for now, it's for them in terms of campaign finance, it's a matter of maintaining very good records of where you're getting your money from and what you're spending it on. But also, the first time that we're going to see any reports from anyone who currently has a committee registered is going to be January 4th. So that's another next key date that we'll see from folks out there. But generally, yeah, so it's the key things. Maintain your campaign finance records, Wait until the certain, until February 9th before you start putting signs out, and then there are some other responsibilities that they'll have.
Probably the two that are come to mind are, could somebody mail something out right now, or can they knock on doors type of thing, or is there a
They
date
could do
where
that kind of stuff. Certainly there are some, there aren't restrictions, but there are things that you have to do if you're going to be mailing. You got to put disclaimers on them, and certain campaign finance requirements. But yeah, they could be
doing that at this point? Yeah. Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you. That just sparked one other thing that I just reckoned back to. To the extent you can, administratively, the faster you can post the finance reports of all the candidates, the better. I mean, that information is critical to any candidate as they're kind of looking. So, if you can turn them around in a day or whatever,
absolutely.
as quick as possible,
Yep.
so they're online for everybody to see, and for voters and everybody, just for the transparency aspect.
Yes.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll get the right title out by the time I'm done. Thank you for sending your presentation to us in advance. I really appreciate that. As a part-time counselor, it's good to have that information so we can ask informed questions as part of this process. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate getting it so I have time over the weekend at least to take a look. Could you get us, and I know you probably won't have this off the top of your head, but some deadlines for charter amendments? I know at one point you had done that for us. And
February 9th is the deadline.
And that's the deadline if a citizen initiates.
So there are three ways: a citizen-initiated one, ordinance passed by the City Council, or the Charter Revision Commission.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Councilor Staley.
And just another point of clarification for the citizens who are listening. If, let's say, someone decides they're going to be running, they're starting to campaign now, and they want to run for the at-large position. And then down the road, they say, hey, I think I'm going to change my mind and run for, like, the Southeast. Tell the citizens how that works.
Well, when you circulate your nominating petitions, you have to identify, and so this, between January 26th and February 23rd, you have to identify specifically what you're running for, and once those are filed, that is for whichever race you'll go on the ballot. Now, at this point where we are in this stage of the game, you could submit a statement of organization saying you're running for X and decide in 5 months to change it.
So just because someone says, I'm running for X, doesn't mean they can't run for Z.
They would change it. In terms of campaign finance reporting, they could change it. They could make an amendment to their statement of organization. But the key thing, where they land on the ballot, is absolutely critical, and they need to understand the implications of what they put on the nominating petition. You have to put what you're running for, then that's it. Yeah.
Any other questions for the city clerk? Councilor Rolfing.
Would they have to get circulate petitions if they change the area that they're going to run for?
So we'll just kind of do it chronologically. If you submitted to run for mayor today, and then decided on February or January 15th that you want to run for at-large position A or B, that would be purely through the campaign finance venue, because you're required by law to state on your statement of organization what position you're seeking. And if anything changes on your statement of organization, then you need to file an amendment, in which case it would be updated. So assuming you don't make any changes, January 26th rolls around. Say you haven't made any changes, but you decide on January 30th that you want to change from mayor to at-large A or B. If you've already circulated petitions for mayor, then you might as well just throw them out if you're going to change it to at-large A or B. And then you have to change your nominating petition to...
That's what I thought. You'd have to go out and get 200 more signatures.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. This is the one statement that I would, I guess, think is, I know things change and someone may drop out of a race or change, but in the name of transparency and your supporters, I find that really interesting if someone would be out collecting donations or garnering support and then bait and switch and say, oh, by the way, now I'm running at XYZ instead of this. I just find that really fascinating that that would be acceptable, but I guess I would question the motive behind that. Nothing to do with you or what you're doing, just hypothetically speaking, that I think that's interesting.
Yeah, just again, any changes to any amendments that are required have to be submitted.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your work on this. I appreciate it. You're always very thorough.
Councilor Starr.
We'll get the microphone going to make it a little easier. There was one other thing that I wanted to more of a statement as well. As we partner with the Sioux Falls School District, I'd sure like to encourage them to reconsider their opinion of not using the schools as a voting location. I think there's something for our students and our young people seeing people come to vote at their school and how important it is. I know that there are safety concerns that they have, but they're similar to having a school concert or other opportunities where people visit the school during the school day, and finding a place that isolates them, the students, and making sure that they're safe. But, you know, in the past we've done mock student voting programs and getting kids involved in the process. And I really think that's a citizenship lesson that we model good behavior, and voting's one of the best behaviors that we can do. We talked, I know that Councilor Selberg earlier talked about celebrating veterans and the service and the commitment they did, and to respect them by showing our young people how important it is to vote and having a chance for them to be there and see it happening. I really wish that the Sioux Falls School District and the school board would reconsider using the schools as voting locations. I know it would also make your job easier as it becomes more and more difficult to find locations in different parts of town that are convenient for the citizens, that have parking and timing. And I know there are times where the schools are a busy place as well. So sometimes churches, sometimes homes, sometimes finding those places and finding the 50-some places that you have to find is a difficult task, and I respect that.
And we've been doing well. We've been able to cover down and, for the most part, get what we need. There's just a few that we're working on.
Probably tougher to find the election workers than it is probably the voting locations. Both are difficult.
Both are take some time, but we're getting them done.
We make it happen. But like I said, I hope in a spirit of partnership that they reconsider their thought process in the selection of sites and being able to use the schools.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Greco? Okay, seeing none. Tom, thank you. It is a huge undertaking to run an election, and it is not something that just happens a few weeks prior to the election. It takes months and years of preparation. Actually, you already begin the preparation process when the previous election is completed with your analysis of how things went and how you can improve things. So thank you very much, and I know that Tamara's already been working on aspects of this upcoming election too, so I thank you and everybody else involved in your efforts.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that brings us up to our final presentation of the day, and it is one that many of us have been anxious to hear about, and many of us are glad that we are at this point that we are here today. So we're going to be, and that is the mixed-use parking ramp, and Director of Community Development, Darren Ketchum, is going to be presenting along with Matt Nelson, Public Parking Manager, and possibly others.
Good evening, Darren Ketchum, Community Development Director, and actually tonight with me is going to be Tracy Turbach, Director of Finance, to cover some of the financial aspects. We do have Matt and Brent and many other members of the team throughout city government, throughout our private partners, both contractors, architects, the private developer, all here this evening. So with that, we will kick this off. There we go. Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to be here this evening, and we're very excited to bring this update forward to the City Council first. We thought it was very important for you to get this information directly from us, and so that's why we chose to do it in this venue, and thanks for having us. I'd like to just quickly thank, before we go on too much, I won't name everybody by name, but those people that have worked on this project for the last, over the last year, couple years for some of the city staff. Just want to say thank you to all of their work, their dedication, their patience, just their endurance they've shown trying to get this project from a vision to a concept, and as we hope here in the next couple months to a construction project and eventually a parking ramp. All right, well, the clicker works a little bit better than the mouse, so we'll switch gears. Here's just a little historical perspective for you. Tonight's project that we're talking about really began back in about 2007 when we had our consultants at Walker Parking Consulting do some studies, and that's when they really told us, yes, the river ramp is served its useful purpose, it's time to move on. And eventually, we all know what happened. That ramp was taken down, and now where we're at today with trying to bring this project forward. And in 2014, this location was also identified by that same consultant as the preferred location in Sioux Falls. The need for this is as strong as it's ever been. You can see that our occupancy has consistently increased over the years, and you can also see what a trend or what the line looks like going forward. You see the spike in 2018. That is assuming you look favorably on this request, and we take those spaces at Mall Avenue parking lot offline. That capacity decreases, the number of occupants stays the same. So we see that spike up to that 106% level. But we anticipate ending this year, 2017, at about that 100% number. As we go into construction and open the ramp in 2019, you can see that our occupancy drops, and that's a function of we've just expanded the capacity and put 525 spots back into the system. So that's why you see that drop back down. And it starts to grow again as the hotel comes online and our private partners come online. And we see that incremental growth, about 1% every year thereafter. Here are the goals that we set out to meet as we embarked on this journey. This is a goal that we can say, is there one of them that's more important than the other? You know, we've looked at this and we felt it was really important as a team to try to advance this project with all of these goals in mind because they're all important, and that comprehensive approach is really what has made this worth the wait. And we do appreciate your patience. We know that the wait has been longer than what we all expected, but this is a very complex project. But I guess without further ado, the moment that we've been waiting for, and we think the wait was worth it, here's the proposed mixed-use public-private partnership and the largest single investment in downtown Sioux Falls history. This is a modern progressive design that makes a fantastic use of the limited downtown land that we have, and will be constructed with a long-term vision. This $50 million collaboration will create opportunity that independently would be difficult to capture. We could not set out as a city to capture this on our own, and it would be difficult in this time for a private developer to move out on their own and create a development of this magnitude. These 525 spaces will support our downtown for decades to come. One of the things that we're most excited about with this project is we've kept the taxpayer in mind throughout. We're proposing to use zero taxpayer dollars as we construct this mixed-use public-private parking ramp. We're not going to burden the taxpayers with this additional debt. However, we are going to provide local governments with millions of dollars of new property tax revenue in the coming decades as a result of the private investment through this project. With this development, we can support hundreds of new jobs in downtown. We can accommodate hundreds of thousands of square feet of new development in our downtown. This puts us well along the path of trying to meet the demands of parking for the next 20 years. We anticipate needing another 1,000 to 2,000 spaces. So we feel that this is the first step in the public meeting that demand. Who's on the team? Well, this is not a new development here. You guys have known this, that we've been working with Legacy Developments and Journey Group and JLG. Tegra Group has been a construction consultant for the city on numerous projects and continues to offer their services through a contract on this project. Similarly, Walker Parking Consultants has a long history with the city of Sioux Falls, and they are also on this project team. Here it is, 13 stories. Be one of the tallest buildings in Sioux Falls. Estimated $50 million investment in our city, with just over $20 million of that being for the public parking system. The 525 parking spaces, 120 hotel rooms, and more than 35,000 square feet of commercial space will be an investment in our parking system and the continued development of our downtown, creating that vibrant, progressive, fun place where you can live, you can work, you can shop, you can play, you can come and visit. This is going to be another destination for downtown. Next, I'd like to ask Finance Director Tracy Turback to come forward and share a little perspective in terms of the finances of this project. Tracy?
Thank you, Darren. As he mentioned, in this segment of the presentation, the slides I'll be covering relate to the public portion of the project and the financial elements related to the public portion, which is to say the parking ramp facility itself. The schematic design phase has been completed, and as you've seen in the renderings, and the terms of the development agreement have been negotiated, and those things really provide the basis for a solid project budget for this project. Now, to get to this point, we do want to acknowledge that the city has invested approximately $700,000 in this effort over the last 4 years. This has not been a simple project, but getting it done right has been a much higher priority for this team than getting it done fast. Nevertheless, now we are ready to ask for the City Council to grant approval to move this project forward. And looking forward, the project budget required to make this project a reality is $20.6 million for the public portion of the project. So what does that $20.6 million include? What will we get for that investment? It does include the completion of the design development phase of the project. That's the next step in the design of the facility, as well as the preparation of construction drawings. So that's the part that's coming next, and given your approval, that will be the major effort in the near future. That will be the completion of all the architectural services to be provided for the project. Construction of the public portion of the project, of course, is a major part of that $20.6 million, and again, that includes the parking ramp and also some site and drainage improvements on that site. A certain amount of fixtures and equipment related to the parking ramp, as well as legal and administrative costs to complete the project, and of course the contingency in the budget is also included in that $20.6 million. How will the city fund that? Well, it's really going to be a combination of bond proceeds and cash. The Parking Enterprise Fund has been accumulating cash in recent years, and we're proposing to use $4.1 million of that cash balance for this project. The balance of $16.5 million would be raised by this sale of bonds. So the $16.5 and the $4.1 get us to that $20.6 million city budget. Now, the bonds will be issued as sales tax bonds, but will be repaid from parking system revenues. As you're accustomed to in recent bond sales, those bonds would be sold on a competitive basis, taking competitive bids. We would expect, in this case, to issue the bonds as taxable bonds due to the nature of the improvements being made. The ordinance, the bond ordinance that you'll see on first reading a week from tonight would provide a maximum term of 20 years, although I do anticipate a significantly shorter term ultimately when the bonds are sold, at least at this point. That's my expectation. The bonds are called sales tax bonds because they will carry the backing of the city's second penny sales tax revenues. And that really provides much greater security to the bond holders and investors. It makes for a much safer investment from an investor's perspective, and that benefits the city because then the investor feels safer. They are willing to accept a lower rate of interest on the bonds, which of course in turn saves the city parking fund interest costs over the life of the bond. The bond issue would be sized to raise that $16.5 million to fund the project budget. And in addition, as you've seen in other bond issues, to fund a debt service reserve fund and provide for the cost of issuance and any capitalized interest associated with the financing. So that's really the kind of the nuts and bolts of the funding package. I think a question that's certainly on a lot of minds is how will those bond payments be managed within the parking enterprise fund? So I want to spend a little bit of time walking you through that. We have done extensive work to develop a cash forecasting model for our public parking enterprise fund. Some time ago, we worked quite extensively with internally to develop the model and then had it vetted with services provided by Walker Parking Consultants as well as PFM, the city's financial advisor. So both those firms have vetted our model to develop our cash flow forecasting. The table on the slide provides a summary of the model over the expected life of what we're proposing for the bonds. And I want to take just a minute to walk you through some of the numbers. 2018, we are anticipating starting the year with about $5.1 million in cash in our parking fund. That's about where we are today, and we don't anticipate that changing much between now and the end of the year. The expectation throughout 2018 as we continue to operate the system that the operations would generate about $1.4 million in positive cash flows. In essence, that's the amount of revenues that are left over after paying all of our operating expenses and repairs and maintenance on our existing system assets. We would have $1.4 million left from that cash flow. And then, of course, the $4.2 million includes the $4.1 that would be invested in the new ramp, as well as some other smaller capital projects. And our first bond payment would then be made in 2018, projected at $1.2 million. So that would leave us about $1.1 million of cash in our parking fund at the end of 2018, and you can see through 2019, we would not have the new ramp open for a full year. It would be open for part of that year, and so we would expect operations, again, to generate positive cash flow overall in 19 of about $1.5 million. Again, a typical year for capital investments in the rest of the system, and debt service payments of about $1.2 million, again, leaving $1.2 million in cash in the fund. And from there, once the ramp is open, we do expect the system to generate annually about $2 million in annual positive cash flows from operations. You can see that in the years laid out further on the table. And again, I think it's important for people to understand that $2 million in annual cash flows, that's after all the expenses, the day-to-day operating expenses of the system have been paid, including repairs and maintenance on the existing facility assets. So we're not skimping, we're not going to cut back on repairs and maintenance of other assets so that we can make our bond payments. The operations will generate enough positive cash flow to continue to make capital investments as well in the system and to make the projected bond payments each year. As you can see on the table, we've, and this is consistent with the target that we've set, a reserve target for the parking fund of $1 million to maintain that level until the bonds have been paid off. This forecast assumes a 12-year term on the bonds, which would provide the result in the final payment being made in 2029, primarily with that debt service reserve fund. So even though the ordinance, as I said, would provide for a maximum term of 20 years, our cash flow forecasting indicates we could pay the bonds off in 12 years. So this level of debt service payment is clearly affordable to the enterprise fund, And that conclusion really is based on a number of key factors that we looked at as part of this cash flow model. We did anticipate incremental growth in leased parking in the future. Relatively conservative assumption, and Darren mentioned earlier, we're assuming 1% growth in the demand, which is certainly, in recent history anyway, very, very conservative by comparison. We do anticipate continuing to make incremental regular rate increases, very modest increases annually to keep up with inflation and the increasing cost of operating the system. We also anticipate the proceeds from the sale of the development rights, and Darren will touch on that in just a minute, will be deposited into the parking enterprise fund, so that the dollars generated from that part of this venture will be supporting the parking system as well. And then we also, as I mentioned before, continue to adequately fund the ongoing repair and maintenance of the existing system facilities. And this cash flow model really anticipates over the life of the bonds between $400,000 and $500,000 a year each year on repair and maintenance of other system assets. And if you look into the past, recent past, that's significantly more than what we've been spending in recent years on repairs and maintenance. So again, we feel like that's a very conservative number, estimating rather high in terms of what we will spend on repairs and maintenance on our other system assets. And of course, one of the key assumptions that we've made and key factors is that $1 million reserve fund that we want to maintain on the bottom line as a buffer for unexpected events in the future. So as you can see in the cash flow forecast for the life of the bonds, we would anticipate that cash balance to stay at or above that $1 million target through the life of the bonds. With that, I'll turn it back to Darren, and he'll take us home on the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Well, Tracy did an excellent job of covering some of the financial details in regards to the public portion of the project. We do have that private development partner out there, and we want to acknowledge the significant investment that they are making in Sioux Falls. And through this project, Legacy Developments will have a $30 million investment in downtown Sioux Falls. $30 million. Fantastic opportunity for our citizens, for our visitors, for our businesses. What does that really mean, though? What we want to communicate to you tonight is that the private developer is responsible for 100% of the private development. The city is not constructing portions of our development for them. They pay their fair share, we will pay our fair share. They'll design it, construct it, operate it, manage it. This is an 80-year lease that they're getting on these rights. The city will always retain this asset, the dirt on this site. We will always own this land. So for the next 80 years, Legacy Developments will get to have their hotel and commercial operations going there. And they will pay the city $1 million for that opportunity. And that $1 million will be paid to the city in advance of them welcoming their first guest into their hotel. The city will have that entire amount up front before they start their business operations. One of the biggest selling points that we look at, we talk about TIF in this body once in a while, and certainly each opportunity is unique, and we don't have a blanket policy or just it's not just a simple formula because it's so complex. And one of the things we looked at and we worked with Legacy on is this is a really great site and this is a really great opportunity. And we both made a commitment from the beginning that neither the public portion of this project nor the private portion of this project would seek tax increment financing. So we looked at that, tackled that together, and feel that this is an even stronger opportunity for the citizens of Sioux Falls because of that. So what does that mean coming forward? Tracy mentioned the bond ordinance would be coming up next week for its first reading. There's two ordinances that are part of this project, and those would be both presented to the City Council for their consideration of first reading on November 21st. And then the remaining items in the second reading would take place on December 5th. We'll bring this forward as a package deal. We don't want you to have to guess about okay, I'm getting a developer agreement now, and then I'm getting a bond ordinance, and then I'm getting a lease. You're going to get this project in a package, so you can consider this comprehensively on November 21st and December 5th. So beyond the consideration of this project in the next couple of weeks, and with your support and approval, we intend to break ground in the spring of 2018. This project will take a couple years to get done. We've given ourselves plenty of time to do this right. This is going to be a large concrete structure. I think we all we're pretty excited to see the Washington Square go up, and this is going to be a little bit taller, a little bit bigger. It's going to take us a little more time to get that done, but we do anticipate all construction being complete no later than December 2020, and certainly all of the parties involved, public and private, would be much happier to see that sooner than later. Obviously, private developers don't make money on construction projects that don't have guests in there or tenants, so they're certainly excited to get this going. Thank you for the opportunity. I know there will be questions in the coming weeks, and our team is excited to answer those, and we'll continue to provide you more information. As we close, I'd like to thank you for your time and for your consideration. I'd just like to share one short video with you before we move to the next portion. City Council, thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to try to answer any questions tonight. And certainly, as you have questions in the coming weeks, we'd love to sit down with you and talk with this body and answer any of those questions or answer the best we can. And Council Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Ketchum, and thank you very much, Director Turback. Questions for the directors? Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What kind of stress testing has been done to look at possible downturns, vacancies, things like that, to assure that, in the worst case scenarios, the payments can be made?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because that is an important aspect of the forecasting model that we've done, is to stress test it. And we have done a number of different scenarios, starting at a loss of as little as 2.5% of our customer base, all the way up to 25%. And certainly a 25% loss that's not recovered is a significant, would present a significant challenge. But if we lost, for example, 10% of our customer base and never recovered that over the life of the bonds, we would still be in a very manageable position. I mean, obviously we're not going to just stick our hands in our pockets and not recover those spaces or recover those customers, but we have done extensive stress testing, and frankly, that's one of the reasons we leave $1 million or more on the bottom line to provide a buffer, and that's really going forward the biggest exposure the parking fund has to an unexpected event in the future. It's not so much what we might have to spend, it's what we might lose in terms of revenue if we do lose customers. So we've spent a considerable time doing that stress testing.
Okay, thank you. As far as the yearly, is there any yearly revenues or payments that the private developer has to make to the parking division, or is it just at one time?
No, the payments will all be made prior to them opening, so they'll pay the $1 million up front before they open operations, so there's not a monthly lease payment.
Okay, there's just so many components. I don't know if there's any yearly or monthly bills that they have to pay to the division for something, but.
Well, certainly they'll pay for their own parking
Parking, of course,
leases
but-
and that. They won't get that for free. This is completely separate of parking leases. This is just to have the opportunity to build on this site. It's basically like they're purchasing the land. They'll pay $1 million for that opportunity.
Yeah, they're paying for the air rights to put their building on top of our ramp.
Correct.
And that leads into my other question was the parking agreement that they would have. Are they just paying full rates? How have you worked that out, how that's going to work?
Well, upon, approval of the city council, we will go out and market this parking structure to more than just the private partner. So we want to be able to bring those leases back and do the large multi-year leases all at once. We feel it's more competitive and we can get a better return on our investment from the city perspective. We haven't signed any agreements with them or any other parties for a long-term lease on that.
Presumably, though, they're going to want to lock in a certain amount of spaces for their customers.
Absolutely. We know that we're going to work towards at least 120 spots with them, and the interest in this project has just been fantastic. We've had numerous parties reach out to us already that are also interested in signing long-term leases. Parking is one of those things that will either inhibit or enable your growth in downtown. And so there's a lot of parties that are lining up because they want to get a piece of this parking pie.
And maybe finally, for now, before I defer, do you have the latitude in ordinance where if you have a lot of demand that you can move that price up as with supply and demand? Or do you have to come back to us if you might have the demand to charge more, but you can't?
Yeah, certainly, Councilor, we have that range, that ceiling that we can't go past in the ordinance. We don't anticipate going past that in the near term.
Okay.
But should we be in a position where demand is so great and we're trying to create some scarcity in all of our assets, and we may have to come and ask the council for approval to raise that ceiling. But that is something we'd work with the city council on.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. One quick question. The bonds, Tracy, are those callable, and if so, when? What are we projecting?
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of motivation from my perspective to shorten the term as much as we can so that we can put the city in a position in this scenario and after 12 years to begin to look forward to the next ramp and provide that level of financial flexibility to do that. Typically, because these are going to be issued as taxable bonds, they don't have all the same limitations in terms of prepayment that a tax-exempt bond would have. So there isn't a specific call date placed on the bonds. There would be, essentially you can call them any time, but you do have to, there's what they call a make-whole provision so that the investors that bought the bonds are made whole in their investment, because we do expect that they would sell at a premium, just like the bonds we sold last week or 2 weeks ago.
Super, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Staley.
Well, first of all, it's not a secret that I've been opposed to this project, and I would love to see us put this off until we have our next administration in place, because it's putting something on the backs of the new council and the new mayor to sustain this. I think it's very problematic. And I'm not opposed to parking for our downtown area. I certainly support development, and Darren, you referenced how excited we were about Washington Square. Yes, it was exciting. It was privately developed, and they did get a TIF, but that was private money. This is using our tax dollars. And I am committed, and I hope all of us here are, to doing the best thing for all of our citizens looking forward, that we have to handle this money as if it is our money, that we're handling the taxpayers' money. And I'm also concerned that I understand this is not coming out of the second penny. I'm opposed to using that as collateral. But I also am concerned about putting this on the backs of our employees who work downtown the people who are using these parking ramps, as Councilor Erpenbach has said, it's going to be supported by user fees. So we have people who work downtown, and are we going to be raising rates on these existing ramps and parking lots to sustain this thing? Am I right if I'm referencing this, and I will be talking to the public about it, that now if we talk about the total project, I can say $20.6 million. Right? I heard Tracy Turbeck say, okay, so now it's gone, because I was saying 18, 17 million. I was trying to be conservative. We're talking about $20.6 million. I will tell you, I have yet to talk to a citizen when we talk about this private legacy corporation development, and we say, who are the people going to be involved in this? Who are the investors? And I know we've had this back and forth that we can't know who they are. It doesn't set well with the public. This is a new thing. We've never done it before, and I don't think the public's on board with that, okay? We may be. I suspect the majority of this council is going to go along with you next week and in 2 weeks from then, whenever we have the second reading. But the public is not buying into this. 525 parking spaces. Right now, am I right that the flat space has 130 spaces?
Yes,
Okay,
135.
so we're going to, 525, so we're losing the 130. Norm Drake, when we met with him, he said he's going to be using, it was at least 100 spaces that he would be taking, right? So that's leaving us with how many new spaces?
Well, Councilor, the way we look at this is there's 135 spaces there. There's going to be 525 spaces. If we are fortunate enough to go out and pre-sell every single one of those spaces and make that money, that means we'll pay this off that much sooner. It's a good thing for us if parking is filling up. That means business is booming in downtown. Fantastic problem to have. If, I hope that we can come back to this council in the next 12 months and say, here's a stack of long-term leases we just sold out of 525 spaces in a year. If
I understand, but we're looking at what we're going to be getting if we have 130 and we're losing those, right? We're going to get, and it's going to become 525.
Yes, Councilor. We'll have about 400 more spaces once this
400 more
project is
spaces
done.
for $20.6 million. Okay. And also, Darren, I wanted to come back. You're thanking people for their patience and their time that have been working on this project. Are those the people who also benefited from the $700,000 that we've already invested in this?
When I thank people, I thank all of the people that have worked on this project, certainly the private parties, the designers, the pre-construction services, those contracts that this city council has approved, they got paid.
Exactly, $700,000 worth.
Yes.
Okay, so this, we're not talking about people doing charity work here.
No, we never asked them to do
Now, the last thing I wanted to ask about is the property tax issue. When we're going to be connected to this entity, the $20.6 million for the 400 new parking spaces, 500, and who's paying the property tax? How do we?
Well, the city does not pay property taxes.
How about the legacy?
They'll pay every penny of property tax that the county assesses them. They don't get a buy on property taxes because they're building on city land. So their investment will be, however the county assesses that, they'll have to pay property tax just like any other building built on.
We're going to have some shared space as far as connectivity.
No, they'll have, it's very distinct. Everything on top of our parking ramp is theirs. They have to pay tax on that. Everything in front of our parking ramp, where you saw that nice 3-story commercial structure, that is 100% private. There is no, space that Legacy is getting that they're not having to pay property tax on. The only thing that won't pay property taxes in this development is the parking spaces. Those 525 within the structure.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Thank you. I'm not really sure where to start. I had some actual questions, but my biggest concern is that we not continue to allow the citizens to hear untruths when we're talking about this particular project. Number one, and it was one of the first things out of your mouth this evening, Darren, was that there will be no sales tax dollars used on this project. Is that correct, or is Councilor Staley telling us the truth when we're using all these sales tax dollars to do this?
No, Councilor, we are using the proceeds from the parking system. will repay that. So the users pay it. We're not using any sales tax dollars, general funds, any of that to pay for this. This is purely an enterprise fund project.
So I don't work downtown and I don't park downtown. How much am I going to have to pay for this parking ramp?
You'll have to pay $0, and when you come downtown on nights and weekends, you can still use it for free.
I can park there for free when I'm coming down
Yes.
to do whatever I'm doing in the evening. Okay. So no sales tax. Talk to me then about property tax, and this is a little outside your range, but I just want to talk a little bit about our role as the City Council. We also sit on a group that's called the Board of Equalization, and we look at property taxes and the way that they're levied in both Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. And the thing that I learned this 7 years ago when I was on my first Board of Equalization. Commercial property taxes are based on square footage. It doesn't matter if those square feet are up in the air, 13 floors, or if they're flat on the ground. That's how property taxes are assessed. Those folks who are paying property taxes are going to pay them based on square footage. And then the last thing I would say, and I will have to have some conversations with you just to kind of clear some of these questions up in my mind, but I just want to remind folks, and those folks that are listening and who are talking to me at length about this project as well, that the entire City Council represents the citizens of this community, and I am hearing strong support for this from the citizens, especially those folks that work downtown and are desperately looking for a place to park their car. And many of them, their businesses are helping them pay for it anyway. So those rates, if we end up having to raise the rates to help those folks, so that those folks will pay for this and that I won't because I don't work downtown and I don't park here, those folks are looking for places to park, and we need to provide them for them. And so I would just remind the council that we do represent the entire community and not just those folks that are talking to Councilor Staley. Thank you.
Councilor Erickson.
Get my microphone on. Sorry about that. First off, I just want to say thank you for your department, Darren, as well as all of the private investment into this project, regardless if it was whoever it was. There were so many people that played a huge role in identifying this project, putting their business on the line, coming forward, coming in front of us, and oftentimes it's, I understand it's the way that this works, but oftentimes there's some mud slung, and it's a bit awkward and a bit uncomfortable for those folks that some mistruths are spoken from time to time. And it's quite frustrating. One of the things that I think is so fascinating about this is this project does not look like just a regular old parking ramp. We have an opportunity to have a landmark in our downtown to spur additional economic growth, to have a built-in tenant. The fact that Legacy is going to rent 100 spaces already is a pretty darn good deal, in my opinion. To know that we have a built-in tenant, that's fantastic. This particular area, I know some of us have reviewed the Walker study that was done some time ago. This particular area was identified as one of the highest needs for parking. They're the expert. I'm certainly not going to challenge them on what they think in this. I appreciate their identifying this area. The other thing that I wanted to, again, just hammer home is this will spur additional development downtown. We've got some great things going on downtown. The downtown division really just looking at additional projects and nightlife. We've got additional parking for nights and weekends. It's a huge investment, and it's one that's never been done in our community for the public-private partnership. Other communities have called me and said, how did you guys do this? I said, well, it's not done yet, so let's get through the process of making sure that we check all those boxes. But other communities are watching and saying, hey, us too, we want to know how to do that. We want something like that in our downtown. And they're just right in our region. And so I know we all serve the same citizen. We all do. We were all elected by the same citizens, and we represent every single same citizen. However, I'm not hearing a lot of backlash. I'm hearing some positivity about, great, this is a great hotel, potential restaurants, potential development for fill in the blank of whatever it is that they choose to bring in. And to know that they're 100% on the line is a pretty darn good deal for this city, too. So I thank you for your vision. I do not have any questions. More or less just wanted to make the statement. Obviously, I support this project, and I'm very appreciative for the due diligence. This hasn't been done overnight. This has taken on a couple of years. So to say it's being hammered on us is just not true. It might have been before some of the other counselors got on board. That's the process. We cannot say, hey guys, 6 months, we're getting a new council. We can't make any more decisions for 6 months. That's not the way this process works. We've got to be moving forward, making decisions. I respect if someone doesn't support this project. I understand that. I do. And I thank you and everyone else that came to put this forward to the downtown. I think it's exciting. So thank you.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report today. I know this has taken a little bit longer coming together than anticipated, but like you said, when you're talking about the largest investment in downtown history, I mean, some due diligence and time obviously probably is a good thing. A few of my points I was going to hit have been hit already. I think a lot of it sounds fantastic. One of my questions was kind of there's always kind of a what's the worst case scenario type of thing. I think you answered that with Councilor Knight, some things that maybe concerned you. Maybe you can repeat that for me if I didn't catch that. But my other question would be is, the one thing I really like about this, I love to see the skyline of Sioux Falls that we're going to see develop. We're starting to really look like a bigger city in that downtown. We're not Manhattan by any means, but boy, we're getting there for the Dakotas, and I think that's really exciting. 37,000 square feet of commercial space. Can you tell us just a little bit about how you see that coming together? Is it going to be a little bit of everything, a little office, a little retail? Is it?
Well, I think a lot of that will be market driven, but certainly the hotel will have a portion of that space for their office and lobby and reception area. And some of their fitness, pool, those will occupy some of that space, but we really see the activation of that first level and second level, third level with additional retail opportunities. There could be options for office space, but that's a private decision. And we support that private developer as they make business decisions, but our role in making private business decisions are, in our development agreement, we've provided a list of here's what you can't do on our land. You know, you can't operate XYZ types of businesses. That's kind of what we've fulfilled in terms of input to who the private developer selects as tenants. That's not really the role of our office or the role of government.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Staley.
Just to clarify, and I would challenge anyone to go back and watch what I said previously, in response to Councilor Erpenbach, I did not say this was going to be funded by Second Penny. I said Second Penny is going to be the collateral for this. Is that correct, Darren?
I don't recall the details.
Well, no, I mean, I'm saying it's going to be the Second Penny will be the collateral, the backup for this.
Yeah,
yes. And I said, I understand this is going to be supported by user fees. That's what I said. And I also said I did not want to put undue burden on the employees downtown with user fees. So just for clarification, we'll go back and watch it. I did not say that.
Councilor, oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment about one of the comments Councilor Selberg made about
go right ahead.
Changing the skyline. You know, and this is a progressive outlook and a progressive design, and this is giving our downtown that more urban feel. And this is one of those high-quality developments. I mean, you don't just stick build 13 stories in the air. This is going to be, you know, a Class A type construction where you're going to see a lot of concrete and you're going to see some steel up in the air. And this is just one of those things where we really push and challenge developers. You know, you've heard us say it at the rail yard last week when we said we're going to challenge developers and we're going to make them raise that bar even higher, and it's going to be uncomfortable. Well, now the city's in the perfect opportunity to put our money where our mouth is. And we're going to meet that same standard. We're going to challenge ourselves in that same way that we challenge private developers. And I think this is just a fantastic example of how the city is leading in this area.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm not sure that I've heard any backlash or anything as citizens talking. There's been a lot of speculation, but till just a few minutes ago, it was all speculation. We didn't have any idea what this project is moving forward, and really we have a week to make a decision to dig into these numbers and get to first reading. So I want to double check so that I'm doing the numbers right, because we're doing this on the fly in a short amount of time. Basically, we're netting 390 parking spaces for $21.3 million, which is the total project cost according to the slides. which in my fast math gets me to $54,615.38 per spot.
Counselor, I don't think it's appropriate to separate out the 135 because they're completely rebuilt. I think you have to look at this holistically. You know, when we approached this project, we didn't approach it with a per spot price in mind. We looked at, we need to provide the greatest amount of parking in a manner that we can afford and that the system can afford and maintain its financial stability and maintain all of the assets in the system.
So if we go back to 525, then we're at $40,571.43 per spot. That's how the standard in the industry is when you look at, you research these projects, you read Walker's website, the studies they've done in other places. Everyone makes a comparison that this is how much per parking spot that it costs, and that's how ultimately we're going to make a decision on this process, is that part of it. But we can disagree on that, I guess. What the other numbers that I want to at least talk about is 2 years ago, we were at $9.4 million for this project, for the public parking project. That's where we started the process, and we got to 10 or 12 million or wherever it was before it fell apart. We were promised that this would come in at 17 million. Now we're at 21.3 now, and again, just making sure that we get the numbers right as we're talking about that. I don't think there's anything inaccurate about those three numbers that I threw out.
I don't believe Counselor, we did have 17.9 in the budget here in the prior years, but the council saw to remove that and did not approve that number ever. So at the request of the city council, they said, go forward, get a design, bring us back something that the city can afford. And so at your request, we've done that. And this is the project that we're bringing forward. Certainly there's price escalation that occurs. You know, this project has never made it to this point. This project has never made it to schematic design. Any previous pricing, whether it's 7 million, 9 million, 12 million, 18 million, was all based off of a concept that was never vetted. And so now we've made it to the point of we have an actual schematic design in our hands that our construction partner can start pricing. That's how we got to the point of where we were today, of that price of the 20.6 of the budget going forward. So there's some differences in that, certainly. Yes, it was what we proposed a couple years ago. Escalation in construction costs, 4 to 5% every year when you're pricing something conceptually in 2015 versus now at schematic and projecting pricing into 2018 and 2019. We all know inflation causes these prices to rise, and that accounts for a large majority of it. But certainly we own that. That's what we brought forward, and what we're saying today is this is a worthwhile project that will deliver at this price, and we think that the system is very capable of handling it.
Okay. At least one more here. The one-time payment is $1 million. And it's been a while since I've done future value of money, so doing my math, when you take $1 million and divide it by an 80-year lease, that would be $12,500 per year to lease the land for the city, plus the future value of the money because we're getting the $1 million in advance. Am I on target there?
I haven't done that math. We looked at if the property were to be sold, in this configuration with having access to dirt at one level and then having to build 7 stories in the air on a portion of it, what would it cost to buy that property? And then that's basically what we said, hey, we're willing to do a lease, but we don't want to sell the property. Right. This is the most premier location in Sioux Falls for parking. We've had a waiting list for years. It'd be foolish of the city to divest itself of this asset. Okay. So in 80 years, we keep the dirt. We've already had our $1 billion to invest back into the system. We just think this is such a fantastic deal for the city. And frankly, the risk that you take on of, do you move forward if somebody just gave you $17,000? Go invest this. So what we're saying, we feel much more comfortable in assuming some of this risk if we have $1 million in our hand going forward versus $17,000.
You said $1 million cash.
Yes, $1 million cash.
Cash in the bank.
Yes, we will get payments from Legacy Development that total $1 million cash in the bank before they open their doors.
The one other thing that I wanted to toss out in more of a statement, we can talk about the difference between sales tax dollars, property tax dollars, and user fees. And to me, if I'm a taxpayer, whether it comes out of my left pocket or it comes out of my right pocket, and I give it to government, whether I'm getting a service, whether it's water, sewer, electric, a parking spot, I use more water to water my lawn than my neighbors do, so I pay more in a user fee, but I'm still paying it based on, I look at what the cost is per gallon of water or 100 gallons as they do on my water bill. So to get into the semantics of arguing where the tax is and where the tax isn't, it's still a tax either on the business owner who's paying that for their employee or the hourly waitress who's working in a restaurant. So it's still money that we have to do for someone to go to work, and it lowers my income, what's in my checking account, whether I'm paying for parking because I work downtown or I don't work downtown. So for me, trying to differentiate property taxes and sewer rates from a fee for parking that I have to pay to work or my employees have to pay, it's still something that we need to take a look at and be very cautious for our residents and our taxpayers in our city. It affects the economy of what we're doing. It affects the personal economy of those employees that have to work downtown. So I'm looking forward to seeing a rate model of how we're projecting this over the next 20 years, because at some point the rates are going to have to go up. I think Councilor Knightsford did a good job of explaining whether there's demand for them, the cost of maintenance over the 20 years, the rates are, whatever. This is going to also affect rates for all parking downtown, because other citizens or other business owners downtown and property owners are going to set their rates based on what the city of Sioux Falls does. I mean, it's as the marketplace takes a look at it. If we charge more, they're going to charge more. If we charge less, they have to be competitive. So again, with less than a week to take a look at this before we start voting on it, it's going to keep us rather busy in our part-time jobs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Clerks.
Go ahead.
Well, we do have more than 1 week. We have 3 weeks until the second reading, and that's the vote that really counts for knowing if it's approved or not. And that was done by design, by having a week in between there to allow additional time. It wasn't tonight and back to back. It was by design to give additional time. And I just want to remind everyone that this is the parking ramp. This debate didn't start 6 months ago. This has been 2009, I believe it was back in the CIP, that there has been having this conversation of additional parking downtown and what is it going to look like. So this isn't a surprise. Since 2009, we have been talking about parking structures downtown. So it's something that you can choose to have you come and give the information, or choose to dive in more if you want. But it has been talked about since 2009, and we did. I mean, we put them through the ringer a couple budgets ago. We stripped your whole parking, and I know that there was some concern from your department as well as parking, the parking division, going, we don't have this in the CIP identified. How are we going to market this? It doesn't look as good if we do that. We put you through the ringer. We really put you to task to say, prove it to us. Prove to us why we should approve this, and what is that amount? Is it 17 million? Is it 12 million? Is it 20 million? What is that? And that's what we asked you to do, and you honored it. So thank you.
I would just say that, kind of based off Councilor Starr's comments, because this is user fees and not tax dollars, doesn't mean you should take this any less seriously. This is still the public parking division, a division of the city of Sioux Falls spending money, and you should take that very seriously. And I appreciate the way that you've approached this, because I think you have challenged us and you've forced us to go back to the board. Certainly, this thing could have just spiraled out of control, and it's really easy when you're doing these things to come back and say, oh well, it's 30 million or it's 40 million, but we know that this is not a free pass. This is not a gimme. We know that the city council, whether it's user fees or tax dollars, you're going to hold us accountable, and we expect that, and that's the right thing to do.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Just to continue with the conversation that Councilor Erickson started in terms of, we've been talking about this for a long time, and those people that live in Sioux Falls that either travel for business, and there are many folks that do, or they travel for pleasure, they've seen that this is not something that Sioux Falls, we've not suddenly created the wheel here. We're actually following a model that's been very successful in other communities. Yes, we're first in South Dakota to be doing it, but we're not the first. And so I think it's important for us to understand that too. I agree. I felt really bad when we gutted the budget. I felt terrible about it, but it was done for the right reasons because we weren't really ready. And I think it's interesting now to see where it's come to, that it is a dramatic difference in what the proposal may have or may have not been. And it is something that has a potential to be really successful for us, but we're going to continue over the next 3-4 weeks to really kind of pick it apart. So I think it's good all the way around. The conversation is great that way. And I just want us to acknowledge, though, that we're not doing this in some kind of vacuum, that this isn't something that Darren dreamed up last week.
Councilor Neitzer.
There's a lot that I'd like to say, but I'll hold until the first and second reading on most of it. But I do have 2 comments, and I have one question. What is the expected life of this ramp? What are you building it for?
We expect the lease with Legacy is for 80 years. We expect that to be the minimum useful life. Certainly with proper maintenance, we expect that this could live well past 80 years.
So this isn't just a little precast. This is going to be
No, this is a
long life.
This is the high quality post-tension structure that at a minimum we're planning on 80 years, and we think with proper maintenance we can get far beyond that.
Okay. And then the couple things I just did want to throw out is having looked into this for a while since we knew this was coming. One of the things about talking about the different price tags is that this has been, yes, it's been in and out of the CIP, but there's a couple of things going on. First of all, it's kind of apples and oranges because it wasn't always the same ramp. It was just kind of a sort of a theoretical idea. And then, of course, you have cost escalation and everything. But so it's not as if this has been the plan for the last 10 years. So it's a little dangerous, I think, to take one price tag and another and say it's now escalated. The other thing, and I noticed this, before I got on the council, following it over the years. The catch-22 or the problem, it's kind of a no-win situation for city government, which is whenever you're talking about a big project, people want a number, and they want it early, and they want a number, and they want to hold you to that, but you haven't done a schematic design yet, so the indoor pool is an example. You throw out a number, and you haven't got that schematic design yet. It's more or less kind of a wet finger, but people want a number. But then you throw out a number, you go to schematic design, it ends up being a little bit more or whatever, and now you're accused of going over budget, and then you're pilloried for that. So it's just kind of a tough thing, and you got to get past schematic. You got to get to that schematic design where you really, really can have that construction manager give you a real firm number that actually is based on pricing everything out and all of the details, not just a simple, well, we're building an 80,000 square foot building and it's X dollars a square, therefore it'll be this much, which is kind of just that wet finger. So I just wanted to share those couple of anecdotes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Thank
Councilor.
you. And again, to piggyback a little bit off of what Councilor Neitzer said, what happens is we talk about this as government officials. Your department's been working on this for a very long time. It's not a surprise, like you said, to yours. It's a surprise to our citizens. When they watch the news and read the newspaper, they're going to say, where did this come from? And you're going to vote on it in a week. And that's what gets us in trouble, because our constituents say, yes, we've worked on it. We've talked about it a lot. We've spent a lot of time internally. We've done a lot of groupthink. We've worked through projects. We've worked through budgets in the short time that I've been on the council, and I get that. And it happened long before I did, way back at the first Walker study that we're using, that we've been talking. It's not a surprise to us, but it is a surprise to the citizens of Sioux Falls. I'll bet at coffee that it's not the last thing that comes up tomorrow. And our citizens, unfortunately, are going to say, oh, where did this come from? And again, that's what they elect us to do, is to be here to go through this process. And I get that. But to say that that they've heard about it and they know about it and, yeah, we're going to do something, until tonight, we didn't have anything for the citizens to show them. We didn't have anything for them to say, and they're going to be surprised by this. I'll guarantee it. Now, whether there's backlash or they're excited about the project, the video is awesome of the skyline of the city, where we're moving forward, but we're rushing our citizens into this.
Any other comments? Okay, then I'm going to finally weigh in. It's sometimes difficult to wait to the end here. But once again, I just want to make it perfectly clear that, yes, we are voting. It's a first reading next week, and we do vote on first reading. But if it goes beyond, the project doesn't happen. We never stop with the first reading. We always proceed with the second reading. The second reading will take place on December 5th, which is 3 weeks from tonight. Mm-hmm. So the vote next week is not the end-all vote. We will have the end-all vote on December 5th, 3 weeks from now. First of all, before I forget, I love the graphics on the video. Nice job. Whoever put that together did a good job. It just gives you a little better feel for the scope of the project. This is, to me, a prime example of public-private partnerships. True, 40% of this is public. 60% is private. But 100% of this is for the community of Sioux Falls, and the community of Sioux Falls is going to continue to benefit from this project for many years ahead. This is a great example of economic development, and it's really the gift that just keeps on giving year after year after year. It's going to increase our tax base. It's going to create jobs. It provides parking. And by the way, if we don't grow our supply, it goes to supply and demand. If we do not grow our supply, demand is going to drive prices up on the existing parking. And we dearly need additional parking. If we do nothing, prices are going to go up. That's just supply and demand. So it provides the parking for the employees, for the shoppers, and for visitors to our city to ensure that they wish to come back again at some point in the future. It's a project that certainly maximizes the space that's provided here, which is obviously going to generate more dollars for many years to come. So not only will we recover our initial investment, but it's going to compound year after year after year. Councilor Erickson hit on this a little bit. People have often asked me, what's behind the success of Sioux Falls? You know, why is Sioux Falls continuing to grow while other communities throughout the country had somewhat stagnated, especially a few years ago? You know, and I've always stated, it's not just city government, but it is city government working with our private partners. I see members of the chamber here this evening, huge partners, members of downtown Sioux Falls, huge partners in this whole city we call Sioux Falls Development, Forward Sioux Falls, and then our private developers that are partnering with this project and other partners or projects that have occurred throughout the city. So I look forward to the next 3 weeks. I'm glad, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we are here at this point. I guess so. After 80 years, we own a building.
We'll own it in about 12, but we get to use it for a lot longer.
Yeah, but after 80 years of the lease, what happens after that 80-year lease?
Well, that's certainly one of
still viable.
Renegotiate leases, and you go back to that, but it's for an 80-year term, and certainly I won't be sitting in the chair negotiating that deal. And
well, I, for one, plan to be around. Okay. In some form, I'm going to be here. Okay. So anyway, thank you very much, Director Ketchum and Director Turback, and for everybody who's partnering with us. As I mentioned, look forward to the next three weeks. That brings us to the end of our meeting agenda. So this meeting is adjourned.